This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Who are the Cleveland Browns I believe need to step up in order for the Browns to make the playoffs? The Browns are sitting at 7-4. It's a pretty tight playoff race. I think 10, 11 games probably going to be what you need to get in. And if that's the case, I do think you need some players to step up so you can have some impressive wins going forward. Now, the good news is that everybody that you need to step up is available. The bad news is that you have lost a ton of people, but let's get into it. The first person that I'm looking at, and this is one of the main people, if not the main person I'm looking at in this next stretch of games to really step up, is Za'Darius Smith. Now, I don't think he's been as terrible as his sack numbers suggest that he might be. I believe he only has 3 sacks on the season. And I know a lot of people are very disappointed in his sack output, but I do think his win rates and his pressure rates have been there for the most part. Really hasn't been there the last couple of weeks, but I do think you need Za'Darius Smith to step up and be the guy who can not just be a guy next to Myles Garrett, but be a game wrecker next to Myles Garrett, especially if Myles is going to be trying to recover from this injury, even though it looks like somehow Myles Garrett, like, he just shrugged off, no-sold that injury because he's not practicing yet, but running, moving that arm like nothing happened. So even if that's the case, even if Myles Garrett is back at full strength, you still need Za'Darius Smith to step up because this defensive line is so critical to the success of this defense. I pointed it out in my film breakdown earlier this week, but if the defensive line does not get consistent pressure, when the Browns are running man, what happens is that you have all of this extra time that is created. And man beaters take time. It takes time to have something develop with speed in the slot. It takes time to have crossers cross each other, right? It takes time to have these rub routes play. The one thing you can do to help your secondary is get pressure. Right now, the Browns secondary is banged up and we didn't get pressure. You saw what happened in Denver. You did not have a good game. If the Browns want to continue their defensive dominance, they have to get consistent pressure, and that can't just be all up to Myles Garrett. It has to be some from Za'Darius Smith. Well, most from Za'Darius Smith. Dalvin Tomlinson, he's been playing well. Maurice Hurst, he's been playing well. Obo Okoronkwo has been playing well. The one guy we're looking at to see if he's going to join the party right now is Za'Darius Smith, and we really need Za'Darius to find a way to get to that 8-9 sack number, and right now, I believe he is at 3. So if you're the Browns, if you want to make a playoff push, I think Za'Darius Smith getting an uptick in numbers is critical to that. Like, it is as critical as ever. Yeah, he has 2.5 sacks right now. So you need him to have an explosion, a hot run at the end of this season to get to that 8-9 sack number, because right now he just has not been as effective as you want him to be consistently enough to justify him on the roster right now. Like, these are kind of Jadeveon Clowney numbers that we're seeing from Za'Darius Smith. And that's not what we traded, well, what the Browns traded for Za'Darius Smith for. They wanted to get more out of that than that. So Za'Darius Smith, he's the first guy I think of when you look at guys who need to step up. Another guy who I feel like needs to step up is Juan Thornhill. And I say this because, and I'll ask you guys this question. When have you seen Juan Thornhill last make a play? Not saying he's been bad. He's been doing his job. His job is to be free safety. But we expected him to be a playmaker a little bit, and he hasn't really made that many plays this season. Honestly, the only time we see Juan Thornhill is when he's trying to make up for a coverage bust by the secondary, or when a running back gets on a big run and he has to make the final tackle. And while all that stuff is cool and all, he really has not been making plays in a situation where you're down to Mike Ford at slot corner and you're down Ronnie McLeod. You really need Juan Thornhill to step up and start making plays. And I think that that's another guy that we need to think a lot more of at the end of this season than we do right now in order for the Browns to make a successful playoff push. Again, you lose Ronnie McLeod, okay. You lose certain guys along the defensive line, okay. But you got to have guys step up. Juan Thornhill, Zadarius Smith, two of the guys there. Another guy who I feel like needs to step up is Greg Newsome. He's been up and down this year in the slot. He's been up and down this year at outside corner. He's just been up and down all year. Sometimes he's making tackles. Sometimes he's not. Sometimes he's making plays. Sometimes he's not. Really need him to step up and be more consistent so that the defensive line doesn't have to get a sack pretty much every play in order for the secondary to hold up. Not saying that Greg's been bad this year at all, but if you want to tighten the screws on this defense, I look at those three guys as the three screws that need tightening, right? Zadarius Smith for pressure purposes, we really need him to step up, be that real anchor next to Miles. Juan Thornhill, secondary playmaking purposes, need that there. And Greg Newsome to make sure that you're not giving up a bunch of first downs. Right now, people are trying to target Mike Ford. Really need Denzel Ward to get healthy so you can slide Greg Newsome back over to that slot and get him back over. But those are the three pieces on the defense. The defense isn't a problem. Defense is a positive for this team. But if you want to make a playoff push, you want to have a tightly wound machine. And these are the three screws I think need to be tightened on defense. Now let's move the focus over to offense. Who needs to step up on the offensive side of the ball in order for the Browns to make the playoffs? First guy I'll put here is Cedric Tillman. I need Cedric Tillman to continue to be what he was when DTR was in there in the Denver game, right? Like that was a version of Cedric Tillman that I can get excited for. That was a version of Cedric Tillman that I'm like, okay, this is the guy that we drafted in the third round. I think quietly, one of the guys who's always been on these lists during the season has been Elijah Moore, but quietly he's put together a handful of pretty good games. Not anything mind-breaking. I believe they're all like 50, 60-yard games, but productive, good games from Elijah Moore. They found a way to get him more incorporated into this offense, and he's on track to do what you expected him to do in the offseason. But Cedric Tillman right now is behind Donovan Peoples-Jones in receiving yards on this team, and Donovan Peoples-Jones ain't played for the Browns in like 3 weeks. So you need Cedric Tillman to step up now that he's in that role that DPJ was in. So yeah, Cedric Tillman, definitely somebody I need to step up just so this offense can have more explosive options and big play options, because right now it's all on the shoulders of Amari Cooper and David Njoku, and that just can't continue to exist. And while it's nice that Elijah Moore's stepping up, you want more options. And if you throw Joe Flacco or DTR out there with 4 guys who could play make versus 2, you're going to be in a much better position to succeed. So Cedric Tillman, somebody that I see the buds of him starting to step up, but needs to be consistent with that. And maybe if DTR stays in there, that happens. The other player I need to step up, and this is kind of a combo pack, Garyon Christian and Jed Wills, if he returns from injury, need those guys to step up. Even though I would say that now that Joe Flacco and DTR are the options at quarterback, this is a little bit less important. And the reason I say that it's a little bit less important is because Joe Flacco and DTR are going to get rid of that ball quickly. So you don't need the greatest tackle play in the world, right? Like when you have to shine out there, you need a gangster. at left tackle because Deshaun's going to hold that ball for like 3 seconds. But with DTR and Joe Flacco, they very rarely hold the ball over 3 seconds. They're going to get rid of the ball quickly. So this is a little bit less important, but it's still something that you want when it comes to the run game. And I think Jed Wills coming back is going to be really good for the run game on that left side, because right now we can only really run on that right side. And that's only when like certain people are in. So that's been a little bit of an issue here for the Browns. But Garyon Christian, Jed Wills, you just want them to continue to be serviceable and good players like they have been. And that's where you're looking at those guys. And the last skill player I would say that needs to step up is David Njoku. Not to say that David has had a bad year. He hasn't. But David could be having an amazing year right now. He's settling for a great year, in my opinion. What do I mean by that? If we just look at the last 2 weeks alone, I'm confident David Njoku has left at least 2 touchdowns and at least 150 yards on the board. If you just look at the last 2 weeks, he could be having a great year. He is having a good year. Well, not a great year, an amazing year. He's having a good year. He needs to step up, catch some of these passes. DTR really does a great job of finding guys and getting them the ball in stride and allowing them yak opportunities in the structure of this offense. David Njoku should be killing right now. And he's been in situations where he should. You go back to the Baltimore game, there was a 3rd and 7, Deshaun Watson threw him. If he catches that, it's a 25-yard touchdown for David Njoku. That's 1 touchdown left on the board. You go to Pittsburgh and you win that game by a significantly higher margin too if you get that play. Then you go to the Pittsburgh game. Another game where if he would have caught the touchdown, you win by a higher margin. Doesn't feel like you squeezed it out like he did, but he doesn't catch a touchdown. Another game, Denver doesn't catch a touchdown when it's right there in his hands. David's had a rough 3 weeks. I get it. Players go through rough patches. But whether it's DTR, whether it's Joe Flacco, whether it's been Deshaun Watson, whoever it's going to be, he's been having a rough few weeks. He needs to kind of anchor down, step up for this playoff push because, again, he could be having an amazing year. We could be talking about David Njoku, who's one of the best tight ends in football. But right now, he's settling for a good year. And early in the year, he had the excuse that he wasn't used in the flow of the offense, that they weren't really throwing him the ball downfield. Now they are throwing him the ball downfield. They are using him in the regular flow of this offense, and he's getting incredible opportunities because of it, and he's just not capitalizing on them. Again, 3 straight games where he's dropped a touchdown. The 3rd and 7 play with Deshaun Watson against the Ravens, the Pittsburgh game, and last week. 3 straight games. He could be having an amazing year. He's settling for a good year. He needs to step up and get closer to that amazing year. Not going to get those touchdowns back, but he could be stepping up. He could step up and get that amazing year that's ahead of him. And in general, especially when DTR's in there, I don't know what Joe Flacco is going to look like if he goes, but especially when DTR's in there, I really need these wide receivers to stop dropping obvious yak situations just because they get excited. We've seen this with Jerome Ford. We've seen this with Elijah Moore. We've seen this with David Njoku. We even seen it with Amari Cooper. I understand that you are not getting yak earlier in the year, or Deshaun was not giving you good yak opportunities early in the year because he was rusty or whatever was happening with his shoulder. I don't know. But now you are with DTR. And how many times do you see somebody drop the ball before they can get going because they're too damn excited? Gotta get that shit under control, because I feel like DTR should have at least 1 250-yard game here, but he doesn't because we keep dropping those opportunities. DTR is somebody who, I just want him to continue to do what he's done, but honestly, it's a quarterback position in general. You just need less turnovers from the quarterback position. You need to have solid play from the quarterback position. Again, get rid of the ball quickly. I think DTR can do that very well and then add some upside that Joe Flacco can't at 38 years old. But I think Joe Flacco will be fine enough to throw in there for a game. So quarterback position, as much hell as you gone at that quarterback position, that's one of the spots that I'm not super worried about. I'm more so worried about everything around it. But those are the guys that I think need to step up. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.